At home, politics appear to rest on shifting sands. The Labour Party used to count on the working class vote, but was shocked to lose the red wall to the Tories in 2019. Whilst it regained all those seats last year, it's not clear that it regained the support of the proletariat, as Keir Starmer's Labour received fewer votes than Jeremy Corbyn's Labour 5 years before. Meanwhile, Reform UK thinks that its stance on immigration attracts the ordinary voter, and it's courted working-class voters by embracing the nationalisation of British steel. Which party is Britain's true workers' party? Andy, what do you think?
I think, the suggestion that Reform UK would ever be the party of the workers or even the party of the working class is ridiculous. This is the party that voted against the Employment Rights Bill, that have stood against the Employment Rights Bill, banning the bill that would ban fire and rehire, that would give rights from day one, that would protect maternity and paternity pay, which would equalise the minimum wage. That on its own, I appreciate that's a trade union aligned thing, but even then, Reform UK, they talk about white working class issues. They say they're the defenders of the working class Britain. They only talk about them when it suits them. They'll talk about immigration because it's, alienating the working class. They'll talk about big cities alienating the working class, but only when it suits them. They don't talk about the working class issues of, child poverty, of dental issues on council estate. They don't talk about advocating for apprenticeships, which will raise people out of poverty. They choose and pick which times they want to advocate and defend and speak for the working class, but they never just speak for the working class in all their issues. They pick and choose and just use them as a political football. So to suggest that Reform UK are any sort of workers' party is ridiculous.
Andy, you've spoken with a passion that makes me think you're quite worried about this.
No, I'm not particularly worried. I think the Labour Party have certainly, failed to truly represent the working class for the last 30 years. Certainly they've moved to a more middle-class metropolitan kind of voter base, which wins them elections. But realistically, Reform UK, I'm tired of Reform UK using the working class as a political football. They've been doing it, for well before Reform UK, well before the Brexit Party. Nigel Farage has been doing this since '97, and it's just silly to suggest he has the working class vote behind him because he just uses them as a football.
But he does have the working class
does
vote
Andy
before
protest
him.
too much?
Well, look, the reality is that the working class don't agree with you.
Well, I am working class, so I feel like I'm entitled to agree with myself. Thank you.
No, you can absolutely have whatever you want, but the working class as a whole don't agree with you because we know from the polling that the majority of the working class...
C2DE voters, which is the legal working class, all support Labour. They overwhelmingly support Labour.
So we know from the polling that the most popular party amongst the working class in this country and across the red wall is Reform. I'm not a member of Reform. I don't have a dog in this fight in that sense. But the reality is that if you look across the top 100 target seats that Reform has for the next general election, nearly 2/3 of them are currently Labour held. So there is a disagreement between those who wish for Labour to represent the working class and the perceptions of the public, who by and large, at least at this point, across great swathes of the North, the Midlands and Wales, for instance, are at least saying, and in larger numbers voting, for Reform. So,
Jennifer, I suppose we can't know what the working class thinks because it's a very variegated beast anyway, but tell me what things you think the working class is interested in that Reform is offering?
Well, we know quite a lot, again, a generalization, but we know that they care about secure borders and immigration. We know that they do care about jobs and prosperity and the cost of living. And those are things that Reform speak of. And Reform has the opportunity to take advantage of the Brexit realignment that the Tories squandered. And, it's interesting what you say about the Employers' Rights Bill. And there are things within Labour's policy platform which I do think speak to the traditional working class. But you have to bear in mind that, on the other hand, they also are keeping on net zero. So they, let's take control of Scunthorpe Steelworks. Great. But if you're not going to allow the coking coal mine to reopen in Cumbria, if you're not going to bring down wholesale electricity costs to allow our industry to be competitive, then it's just the rhetoric of being for the working class when not in practice supporting reindustrialization and working class jobs. So I think...
Let me stop there, Jennifer, mate.
Us blokes hate talking about a little thinning up top, and many of us settle with that balding look, but that wasn't for me, and that's why I went to Elite Hair, the world's leading hair loss clinic, and now I've had over 4,000 new hairs added to this barnet, and very soon I'm going to be rocking some brand new flowing locks. And you can too! So how does it work? Step 1, I sent the team a set of photos of my head. Step 2, I then spoke to one of the Elite Hair staff who looked through my photo submissions and worked out a treatment plan for me. Step 3, Elite Hair then organised accommodation and the treatment. I was at their state-of-the-art treatment centre in Istanbul, and their incredibly kind staff took me through the process, and before I knew it, I was in surgery. Elite Hair and their leading medical experts have specialised in pain-free treatments using the sleep deep method, and they really mean that. I felt incredibly relaxed the whole time, and I haven't felt any pain since. Check out Elite Hair using the link in the description. When you do, Elite Hair will provide you with a free personalised hair analysis. Then you'll join over 100,000 happy patients. Hit that link and start your hair growth journey like I did today.
And bring in Aubrey. Aubrey, do you think Labour, which traditionally had the working class vote, has some difficulties with it today? The sorts of things that Jennifer is describing.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's trying to cover multiple bases, and Andy made an astute point, which is that Nigel Farage has sort of played this game before. You know, UKIP went through an arc of kind of hoovering up, you know, traditionally conservative voters. They were viewed originally in the sort of early kind of 2010s as a sort of party of people who wore red trousers, the Eurosceptics, people that sort of looked like Nigel Farage and wore the tweed, and then they morphed, they changed into becoming this kind of vacuum which represented people who felt sort of socially left behind by the Labour Party, and they started representing people based on their social values more, and that caused them to get millions of votes in the 2015 general election, which they got, I think, 1 seat for, an absolute maximum. So the force has always been there, but now Nigel Farage has learned from that experience. He is reinventing the party, and he's done well to obviously hoover up lots of Conservative voters at the last election, arguably gifted Labour a much bigger majority by, splitting the vote on the right, and now he's going after those Labour votes as well.
Mm.
And according to a piece in The Observer today, Ed Miliband is doubling down on net zero. Then it's not very clear what Labour's immigration policy is. It's not very clear what its policy is on biological realism. These are difficulties for Labour, aren't they?
Oh, certainly. I mean, if I had all the ideas about Labour policy, I'd be working in the number 10 policy unit. But luckily, I'm here with you. I think when you look at, policy literacy, it's fair to criticise Labour and it's fair to criticise the government. They are the governing party. When you look at reform, they have no answers. Their big thing to fix immigration is to leave the ECHR. Well, they have never considered that would completely collapse the Good Friday Agreement. That would collapse the Supreme Court rulings in this country. They have no answer to these questions when they're posed to them of what would happen. You can't just go, oh yeah, just bin off international law. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. So, when you can say Labour don't really have the answers, well, Reform certainly don't.
I would agree with Andy on that. I think one of the weaknesses of Reform is at the moment they have such a weak policy platform. That's not to say I expect them to have everything written out 4 years before a general election. But when you look at the few areas where they have made policy pronouncements, they've been ridiculed. They just have a paucity of talent internally for whatever reason. Maybe they'll address it. But at this point, they just don't have the policy people internally to be turning out credible policy on a whole range of issues. So will it go beyond rhetoric and get into the detail remains to be seen.
Thank you, Jennifer. It does indeed. Jennifer Powers, Aubrey Allegretti and Andy Twells.